The slope formula. Our objective is to find slope by using the slope formula. Why learn this? You can use the slope formula to find how quickly a quantity, such as the amount of water in a reservoir, is changing. Our slope formula, or slope equals m, is the change in y over the change in x, so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's practice finding slope by using the slope formula. So we have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. I suggest labeling your points. So you have x1, y1, x2, y2. Your little sub-numbers here are just to denote that, hey, that's the first quadrant we're looking at, and this one is the second. It's to keep them separate. Alright, so now let's substitute in our values. Our y2 is this 2, and our y1 is the negative 2. So we have 2 minus negative 2. Now let's substitute in our x2 and our our x2 and our x1. So our x2 is negative 1, and our x1 is 4. So negative 1 minus 4. All that's left is to simplify. So 2 minus negative 2 is 4, and negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. Therefore, the slope that has both of those points in it is negative 4/5. Take a moment and pause the video and try these next three on your own. Alright, now that you've had a chance to try them on your own, let's try them together. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So therefore we have negative 2 minus negative 2 divided by 7 minus negative 2. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0, and then 7 plus 2 is 9, which leaves you with 0. Let's try the next one. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So we have negative 4 minus negative 7 divided by 6 minus 5. So 6 minus 5 is 1, and we have negative 4 plus 7, which leaves with 3, so a slope of 3. And now let's check out the last one. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So we have 2/5 minus 7/5 all over 1/4 minus 3/4. So 2/5 minus 7/5 leaves us with negative 5/5. And we have 1 minus 3, which is negative 2 over 4. So if we simplify, we have negative 1 over negative 1/2. And if we recall back when we try to divide by a fraction, so we have negative 1. You can think of that as negative 1 over 1. And we're dividing it by negative 1/2, which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So therefore, it's 2 over 1, or simply 2. Alright, so now let's look at finding slope from graphs and tables. Each graph or table shows a linear relationship. Find the slope. So for our graph, we can simply look at our change in our y and our change in our x. So we've got 2, 2 as one point, and negative 2, negative 1 as the other. So we can go -1 minus 2 over -2 minus 2. And when we reduce, we end up with -3 over -4, which is the same as 3/4. So there's our slope. Now let's try the next one. This one is a table instead of a graph. So it doesn't matter which 2 points you choose. You can choose any of these 2 points. So in this case, we're going to use 2, 0 as x1, y1, and 2, 3 as x2, y2. Keep in mind, you can choose any 2 points. There's plenty of options. So in this case, we're going to have 3 minus 0, and then 2 minus 2. So 3 minus 0 is 3, but 2 minus 2 is 0, so therefore your slope is undefined. Take a moment and pause the video and try these next 4 on your own. Now that you've had a chance to try them on your own, let's try them together. So for this one, we've gone up 2 and over 4. So if you've gone 2 over 4, that's the same as saying 1/2. Alright, so now let's look at this one. We went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 2. So down 6 over 2, which is the same as 3. For a graph, you don't always have to use the 2 points. You can simply count without having to do the algebra. You could also do the algebra, which is what you need for 2C and 2D. So let's try it. So we're going to use this one as our first coordinate and this one as our second. So we have the change in y. So we have 5 minus 1 over 2 minus 0. So 5 minus 1 is 4, and 2 minus 0 is 2, leaving with a slope of 2. And now let's try this last one. So once again, we'll use this one as our first and this one as our second. So we have 0 minus 3, because it's the change in y, over the change in x. So 0 minus -2, which leaves us with -3 over +2. Or -3/2, if you will. Alright, so let's try an application. The graph shows how much water is in a reservoir at different times. Find the slope of the line. Then tell what the slope represents. Okay, so step 1, we're going to use the slope formula. These ones aren't as nice to count, so we'll use the formula. So we have our y2 and y1. So 2,000 minus 3,000. And then 60 minus 20. Which leaves you with -1,000 over 40. And if we reduce this, you end up with -25. So now we need to decide, what does this slope represent? Well, the slope of -25 means the amount of water in the reservoir is decreasing at a rate of 27,000 cubic feet each hour. Alright, so let's look at finding slope from an equation. So we can start by finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And if you find your x-intercept and your y-intercept, then we can use those 2 coordinates. So let's find our x-intercept. To do so, we are going to replace our y with 0 because we want a value for x, just like we learned in the last section. So now we have 6x equals 30. So divide by 6 on both sides, leaving you with the fact that x equals 5. Alright, so for this one, you want to find the y-intercept, so you want a value for y, so x is going to be nothing. It's going to be 0. That means that all you have left is this negative 5y equals 30. Divide both sides by negative 5, and you end up with negative 6. So our two coordinates, we have 5, 0, and 0, negative 6. And now we can use them in our slope formula. So we have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So negative 6 minus 0 and 0 minus 5. That gives you 6 and negative 5. So negative 6 divided by negative 5 is simply positive 6 divided by positive 5. And that ends our lesson on the slope formula.